Despite everything we just told you, one of the president's biggest defenders, Fox News host Sean Hannity, dismissed the findings and declared victory, even though the IG found there was no political bias and more than enough evidence for the FBI to launch the Russia probe.
Well, everything we said, everything we reported, everything we told you was dead on, center accurate, and the mob and the media has missed what is the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in the history of the country.
Joining me now is CNN contributor Garrett Graff, who just wrote a piece for Wired entitled "Fox News is Now a National Security Threat." Garrett, good to have you. To critics who say, wow, this has to be some sort of dramatic overstatement, you say what?
Well, so I think you sort of saw this week the challenge that Fox poses to our democracy, which is the Sean Hannity show Monday night is sort of a perfect encapsulation of it, as you just laid out. The fact that facts aren't even breaking through to their viewing audience makes it incredibly hard to have the types of conversations and the informed electorate that we actually count on in our democracy. And that's all sort of leaving aside the larger issue, which is what you're seeing is the mainstream Republican Party, echoed by Fox News, advancing theories like these debunked Ukraine 2016 conspiracies that have actually been put forward and advanced by the Kremlin as Russian disinformation. So, I mean, the fact that you have U.S. broadcasters embracing Kremlin disinformation campaigns is an immense problem for the U.S.
But as you mentioned, it's not just Fox News. Republican lawmakers are consistently denying basic facts, and they have access to all the public information and then some. I mean, just look at what happened yesterday. Watch this.
Why is it ever okay for an American president to ask a foreign power to investigate a political rival? Why do you think that's okay?
He didn't do that.
He did ask Zelensky.
He did not do that.
He did do that. You saw there most of them walked away, but you heard Congresswoman Debbie Lesko straight up denying what's in what the White House released in that transcript. I mean, they're straight up denying what the president said on the White House lawn about how Ukraine and China should investigate Biden. How do you explain that?
Well, I think what you're seeing is just sort of the outright capture of the Republican Party and conservative media by Donald Trump. I mean, literally just about 6 minutes ago, Donald Trump was tweeting, criticizing Fox News for even daring to host Adam Schiff and Jim Comey tomorrow on their Sunday shows, saying that he can't believe that they would go so far as to have those voices on their air. And, you can sort of see the pressure that the network is under to please its main audience of one during its morning shows and its evening primetime lineup.
The Daily Beast quotes former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon as saying this earlier this week: if you don't think Tucker Carlson has more influence on national security policy than many of the guys on the National Security Council, you're wrong. Garrett, have you seen evidence to back that up?
I mean, I think we see evidence of that almost every single day. I mean, this is a president who conducts most of his policy by tweet. I mean, there is no robust interagency process working behind the scenes to advance many of his foreign policy goals. It's that he is sitting there in the residence during what they call executive time, watching Fox News and tweeting out statements that upset markets, that upend geopolitical alliances. And this is sort of, policy by whim and tweet.
I mean, some people would say you're painting here with a broad brushstroke. They have Chris Wallace over at Fox. He's a highly respected journalist and interviewer, and he gave a speech at the Newseum in Washington this week, and I want to get your reaction to something he said.
I believe that President Trump is engaged in the most direct, sustained assault on freedom of the press in our history. Before you applaud, listen to the rest of this, because I think many of our colleagues in the news business see the president's attacks, his constant bashing of the media, as a rationale, as an excuse to cross the line themselves to push back. And that is a big mistake.
Garrett, what did you think of that?
It was a fantastic speech. And you are right, Anna, that there are some good voices on Fox, some good journalists trying to do good work over there. But you've seen sort of over the course of the year that something fundamental has switched, that a journalist like Shep Smith, who has been a longtime fixture over there, effectively walked out of the building this fall after deciding that he couldn't be part of a ecosystem that treated facts as fungibly as Fox does on a daily basis.
I want to read something from your piece. You write this. In 1984, George Orwell wrote, his imagined dystopian regime told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. But Fox News has actually figured out a tactic even more pernicious. Fox News' own masters of Orwellian doublespeak, it's Hannity's, Carlson's, and Ducey's, the ones who smugly declare down up and up down, aren't even bothering to tell their viewers to ignore their eyes and ears because the truth never even approaches their airtime. Fox viewers and ardent Trump supporters aren't going to read or hear this and suddenly have an epiphany. So what needs to happen?
It's a good question, and it's a tough one. And I don't know that sort of we in the media or we in the political world have figured out how to address and tackle this. I do think that sort of the first step of tackling it, and however it needs to be addressed, is simply sort of naming it. And that, one of the challenges that Fox has laid out is that they have sort of spent year after year attempting to delegitimize any political opposition. The idea that any Democrat is evil, anyone who opposes the president's policies is part of the deep state. And that's not the tradition of American democracy. That sort of the brilliant insight that our founders had was to institutionalize political parties as a legitimate means of dissent, so that dissent was seen as part of the conversation and not as treason. And what Fox has effectively done over the last couple of years is equate dissent with treason. And that's incredibly dangerous for our country, especially coming into an election year.
Garrett Graff, I appreciate the conversation. His piece is really interesting. I encourage our viewers to read it in Wired. Thanks again for being here.